Right. We heard a lot of interesting talks throughout the day. And of course, the highlight was Feng talking a lot about some of the real product that he has been developing. I want to ask first to each of our panelists to share one of the success stories of their long-standing careers in the space, and really highlighting the most critical factor that led to that success. Feng?
I would actually say that the products that we've been building, and the reason that in the last year or two that actually gained quite a bit of a user traction is because when we actually start to really taking the user feedback and iterate very quickly. The reason is, just like the features on a smartphone, when I was actually talking to Peter is sitting there, right? Peter was saying that when the iPhone first came out, who would have believed that this is going to be the device you spend a lot of time on? And so there's actually a process for this device to get better. And the way that we do this for our current appliance products is actually very similar. We do not actually assume that what we have designed at the spec stage, that this washer, smart washer, need to have the following list of features, and that'll be the feature 3 years from now. Actually, the user would actually take on. We believe that this will be the initial take on this, but the user would give us constantly the real-time signals: what feature they like, what feature they hated, what feature they would like to improve. So through that real-time interaction, and that's really helped us to improve. So we have iterated actually over quite a number of years. The first batch of products was actually 7 years ago, but that was actually quite hard to use. And it was also not very clear to user what features, what benefits they're going to get from these smart features. So through this process of iteration, and also our product design itself and the service, and remember, making a product is just the first step. You have to sell the product. You have to service the product. You have to keep people happy, because when something happens, when people call you and say, I don't know how to use this, you need to have a dedicated people knowledgeable about explaining this to the people. So that's actually, I find, is really something that's very helpful. We're still learning. We're still trying to actually figure out how to continue to do that. But I think we are kind of on the right track based on the feedback and the market receptions. And also, we look at the number of devices that are sold, and we see that there's an uptick in the market.
Rajesh?
Okay, so my background's a bit different. I'm not actually from a company. I actually am an academic. So I'll give my feedback what worked well with taking research and making it into something companies actually want, or people actually want. What we found with, I've been doing indoor analytics for like 7 years. What we found that to make it successful, you have to make the deployment cost really easy. If you go to some place and said, look, you have to retrofit your whole environment, you have to put all these things in, they're like, yeah, thank you, we're not interested. So you have to find a way to work with what they have. And we've been really good at that, and now that has led to a startup and things like that. But that lesson takes a long time, especially for academics, to realize that ease of deployment is really important, right? Because we like to make things complicated. Now, we like to build custom hardware. That's not going to work when you try and deploy, right? You have to work with what's out there. And that took a while for us to figure out as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will give two examples. One example, when I was in Huawei. So actually, we are building IoT platform PaaS when I was in Intel research, Intel lab. So we are in the mobile communication group. So we want to also build the IoT PaaS back in 2013. So that time wasn't successful. So but we are successfully in Huawei. We eventually did the context aware engine and build IoT PaaS and successfully deploying it to the 100 million phones. So interestingly enough, so we are in Intel is same thing as a chip company trying to do the building this IoT PaaS. Why they not successful? Because they do not sell the product. And why Huawei is successful, and today is now Samsung is pretty successful in that same thing, and also Apple. So because they have an ecosystem, They not only have their phones, but also they have the applications and partners, and also they have their own app store. They can deliver stuff. They also can combine users' account and etc. A lot of the other information they can do real time contacts over engine, so they can successfully launching IoT paths and still on top of that they still can do the machine intelligence. So being critical is you're only a small portion of a team, maybe like 20 people, but you are working inside of 10,000 massive army. Like the Huawei mobile phones. So how you be a research team, be critical successfully end-to-end product line, that require a lot of the persuasion and visit and collaboration and a lot of course overnight work is kind of like a necessary. It's not it's still also you need a lot of fortune and to help you to get through your product into your technology into the product system. So that's one. And second, we are pretty successful in recently projects. We did one of the called the parking, parking scheduling system. So, and we are successfully in the one area of Hangzhou. Then we connected 100 parking lots, and we make the parking lots all onto the map. Called the AutoNavi map in China, one of the leading the map navigation map. So the technology wise actually for the indoor parking, so we have been working on that for the last 10 years since I was in the Bosch research the group in the 2009 2008. But the first successful launch of the business was last year. Why? Because before we never have an opportunity to do indoor parking system connecting to the map. Today we are, we don't need to do the indoor parking system. They already have the magnetic sensor, have the communication, have the green light, red light, everything. Already have that, but they never had a map before. Now they had a map, and that's they make user experience super well. That's still a success story.
So, would you remind me of the question again?
So the success,
personal successful story or product-wise successful
the product-wise in that space.
In the IoT space,
In the
not
IoT space.
necessarily the one that I did, but just any product that you're talking about.
If you want to share your personal story, that's also fine. What we're really trying to get to in this point is, so we heard, for example, the user feedback is really important. We heard that deployment cost is a very critical factor. Then Sean was talking about the ecosystem is very important to have a successful product portfolio in the space. Similar line. So if you could pick one of the success stories in whatever scale it is that you had experience with, and what critical factor led to that success would be very useful.
I see. I think it's a very tough question. So I wish that I had like something like personal story and experience that I could share with you that say, oh, this has been really successful. But I don't think I have one right now. I'm trying to make one, but I don't have one right now with me. But if I look at this space of smart home and IoT, I see like Amazon and Google been really successful, especially Amazon. We've been watching them growing explosively over the past few years. And I think that they're the key to their success right now, especially this Amazon Echo-based IoT, smart home IoT system, is their ecosystem play. So they are so, they've been so great at embracing third-party hardware companies and applications and all this. And then with the momentum, so the thing is, there's a network effect, right? If that's great if you're the best product out there, But that doesn't determine whether you're going to be the survivor in the end. I believe that first mover has a great advantage, and if you take proper advantage of network effect, and then you can be on the path to success pretty quickly.
Thank you. So we got 4 very critical properties: user feedback, deployment cost, ecosystem, and interoperability as a key success factor in this space. Very good. Now, this may be a little bit difficult because you all are very successful people, but I will still throw it on the table. Could you now share a failure story with us? And why did you fail in that particular project? It could be that you never failed. That's great. Perfectly valid answer.
I think in the early days of IoT, there's quite a lot of projects, including the projects I personally worked on that actually, could be actually really interesting research projects, or some of them even got deployed, but actually getting to the real world to be used by, the intended audience is actually very rare. I can share with you one. Many years ago, when I was working in US, probably more than 15 years ago. I wouldn't, mention what exactly the product, but we actually made what we consider a fantastic diagnostic system. That is, a machine would actually be able to tell, whether this is its components going to break, not based on the schedule, but based on the condition, based on the algorithm, based on all the signals it receives. And that system actually is supposed to be really helpful because the machine was actually one of those machines every department would have, and when it's down, right, everyone would actually not get that productivity done. Have to queue in that machine, right? And you probably can guess what kind of machine is that. And so we actually made that diagnostic system. We have we put in a lot of those acoustics and vibration and a number of those sensors, and we have some very sophisticated algorithms that actually learn these behaviors over the time, and then say, oh, this is about to break. It has certain signatures. When we actually did this in a lab and showed this to the company management and so on, people loved it. And in fact, the BBC or World News at the time even actually had a great report on that. But fielding those and getting them to the hands of the service representative is actually hard. You really need to understand the dynamics in these audience, right, the intended users. So what drives them is that every time they go out to the field to fix a machine, at that time, many years ago, it cost about $120. That's a field trip. And not to mention you have to bring the right parts and other stuff. But if the algorithm has this false alarm, that means you go there, you find that it was not a issue, then you wasted the time. So after a while, the service rep said, this is useless. I'm going to turn that feature off because it actually even wasting my time to service those non-issues or non-calls. And at the same time, all the other customers are waiting for the my service. So we didn't quite understand at that time to really understand the user, to really understand what they want, and to work our product and solutions into their daily routines and their work. So I think that was actually one of those times where we are technologists. We have some great solution, and Yunxin, here's the one, you just go and run it. That's not really the way to do things. That's as I have learned.
Okay, interesting question. I mean, you ask an academic what has been unsuccessful, almost everything, I would say, right? Long line of papers published, how many of those things are actually used? Well, almost nothing, right? So let me give 2 examples. One, even before we had edge computing, my thesis was actually on edge computing, but that was 15 years ago. Today, do we have it? We still don't have it, right? We have it in very specialized domains, but the world has moved on due to deployment reasons and other reasons. Web services are so much easier for companies to deploy rather than giving you custom hardware on the edge that can do random computation for you. That model just doesn't work, even though we had a lot of work on it. Technically, we solved most of the problems. We still don't know how to deploy it, though. And it's not clear we want to deploy it. And then in other cases, I have so much work over the last 10 years on all kinds of solutions that involve smart watches and smart devices and apps on the phone to do all kinds of sensing that will improve your lives, right? Queuing, all sorts of things like that. But it turns out having to change user behavior and making them wear even one more device, not going to work either in the general case, right? So it comes back to deployments. How do you get your solution out to everyone in a way that they actually want it? It's not easy, especially if you're thinking B2B or B2C or even C2C, right? So those are the sort of things that, at least for me, have stopped many of my work from being deployed. Yeah.
So, I just shared the Intel failure into the mobile phone and the battles. Intel spent 1 billion subsidies in 2011, and 2 billion subsidies in 2012, 3 billion subsidy in 2013, and 4 billion subsidy by 2014. That's a total $10 billion subsidy, not including the R&D costs. And in 2015, they lay off 12,000 engineers. So they, called the last. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest failure project I see in my careers. Of course, there's more bigger failure than this one, and I personally be part of that. And I'm a principal engineer of the Intel, and one of the chief architect for the sensing subsystem. So, today you can see the portrait landscape, context aware, and why we be successful, why Intel not successful. It's I think it's beyond the technology, beyond the control of the engineers, and it's more especially for the last 2 years, I have way more respect for the businessman and how to figure out a business model and to using right technology. That's important. So in Alibaba today, we have a slogan. So how to make the technology into product make it into commercial goods, and the commercial goods go to the service. So echo to Feng's, Dr. Zhao's, philosophy. That closed loop, will be the key to success for any technology. So by the way, so I think I realize you are edge computing product into product. So this is the 300 cameras, and this is our edge computing box, and a lot of edge computing servers. Now we're deploying more than 100 campus. So actually, something will come to.
So to me, there's one project that's kind of bittersweet for me. So the project is called Taint Droid. Like one of my collaborators from back then, like Landon, is here too. So I spent almost 5 years of my research career in mobile privacy. So I and collaborators built tools to analyze how badly these Android applications are sharing data to third parties, and so on. And we built some also tools to help users better aware of this issue. And we also worked with HCI researchers to come up with some ways to, make this privacy notice a little more digestible, and all those things. We tried a lot of different things. And yet, a few days ago, I read this article in the Washington Post. While you sleep, your phone stays busy, snooping on you. So it's about iPhone. So this guy, reporter, worked with some privacy researchers, and then looked at this iPhone, all those apps in iPhone are sending your location data, a lot of kind of analytics, what they call analytics data, but it's a lot of data about what you do with this app, right? Back to wherever, right? And Android has gotten worse. And so, I don't know, I feel still people say this is an issue. And so when we published this Tandroid paper at OSDI, I think that was 2010, so almost 9 years ago. But nothing has improved, I don't think, technically, and then I don't think users are getting any better treated in terms of their mobile privacy?
That's a very, very sensitive topic, and we could spend the whole panel on that. But I just want to summarize the few properties that we learned from our panelists. I think the Feng's point of cost of deployment was, again, what Rajesh mentioned, also the success factor. So it's sort of like a very complementary to each other. The timing that Rajesh was mentioning was also really important for finding the right project landing space at the right time. And we also heard that simplicity of your deployment needs to be very important, especially from the user point of view. If it's not the case, then you are bound to fail. Sean reminded us the value of business models. Often as academics or as researchers, we don't necessarily think about business models. Even may have a practical, viable, technically feasible solution, it might fail completely because the business model cannot be created around that. And June was suggesting the threat that we all every day have from our personal scale privacy exposures, and what we should do about this. So if your product is actually doing that, be careful. Great. I hope we learned a lot in the last few minutes from our panelists. So let me move to the second topic of our panel, which is related to human productivity. And the topics that we have been discussing throughout the day has a remarkable potential to contribute either positively or negatively to human level in some form. And I would like to have views from our elite panelists to see what do they think about it, and what should we take back as a community to our universities and homes on this particular topic. Feng, you have some comments on how...
Do you want to expand a little bit on what you mean by...
Yes, I can. So there is this sort of like a pop science fiction that AI is going to take over a lot of jobs that are currently done by humans. And this industrial automation or all these machines that are now being automated, which are now driven by people, or will be automated by automatically these AI algorithms and so on, and that will have sort of like a shortage of jobs, and people will be pushed out of their workforces. And whether this is just a fiction, how far we are from this, like as we are building technologies, do we worry about it? And if so, what should we do around that?
This is actually, I think, a topic that many people, many luminaries has touched upon, right? So I don't know if I can actually offer anything more specific. But I think, this is an issue that it came up, centuries ago when automobile first invented. People worried that all these horse-drawn carriage, they usually have people, right? Drive this, they're going to be out of job. And people worried about this, but look at what happened. So all these generation of technology actually would cause very similar fears. AI is probably one of those that cause enough excitement. At the same time, people worried, is my skill going to be obsolete, going to be replaceable, and so on and so forth. I'm more optimistic. However, it does actually bring a very key point, that is for technology to be coexist with human, we need to figure out how we're going to live with them. So I would offer, one thought that more recently, I think the research communities, for example, Stanford has established this human-centered AI, and I think that's a great direction, right? I think Fei Li had this pretty compelling vision along with a group of those faculties across the spectrum of political science, medical research, right, all the business schools as well as engineering schools to really look at how humans can actually utilize this technology for the better experience of life. At the same time, when you design AI technologies, right, really to take the input from humans. So it's the coexistence. I think the future is human plus machines. It's not like one way or the other to replace each other. So that would be an interesting topic. How do we design the human needs into machines and for it to be co-working together? But I think that this is a big topic. Rajesh might have some thoughts to share.
Okay, I actually wanted to expand a bit on what Feng said, right? I actually think that the next revolution of AI will actually increase the workforce. You see this with every technological improvement. Like when printing press came, everybody is worried. All the town criers were like, I'm out of the job. Yes, they were out of a job, but so many more people got hired because of that. Then radio came along, they said newspapers are obsolete. TV came along, they said radio is obsolete. Every time you see the market just growing. The internet came along, everybody's like, what are we going to do? But would anybody doubt that the internet has created a much larger workforce globally than before it came along? I see this as the next wave, as in the workforce will actually grow as people find more opportunities to do things that they couldn't do previously. But at the same time, people with skills that are no longer relevant will be out of a job. I mean, that is the reality. It's happened with every technological improvement. But we see the market just growing every time this happens. We've never seen it shrunk in the history of humanity, actually.
So actually, I agree with two of the panelists. Number one, I will be optimistic, but actually, a little bit scary to me is that will create more and more job for the low-end job, and it separates the entire human society into two classes. One is high-paying job, one is entirely low-paying job. Actually, because I've been seeing both sides. In U.S., I spent 15 years in the U.S. When I joined Silicon Valley, I see important to different classes. Outside of the very rich man, the businessman, all that. So we can see one is engineering class and enjoy high salary, $200,000, and another class is kind of working level, even in Silicon Valley, lower than $60,000. So I do see that distinguish. If you cannot go to the engineering class, then your life is doomed. The same thing happening in China. It's interesting. Last 20 years, there are the distinguish between engineer and scientist versus a lawyer or versus a paper worker. The gap of salary is not so high, so big. And the China last 2-3 years, maybe last 5 years, the gap growing significantly bigger. And the engineering,
In which direction?
Larger. Yeah, the engineering continuously outperform the growth of inflation rate. Maybe the growth of the salary in China is like year over year more than 20 to 30%. Continue to grow, will grow very fast. And the other side, for the if you are a trader, and for the logistic managers, your salary is lower than inflation rate. China GDP growth rate is roughly 7%. So most of the workers and managers their salary lower than the growth of GDP. Only the engineer is more than 3 times growth of the GDPs. So you can see that. So it's first time the last 5 years. The China since 1978 all the way to 2014. You can my brother is an engineer and his wife is an engineer in China. So used to be his wife making more money than him, but the last 5 years, the salary of engineer continue to grow. So then my brother makes significantly more than his wife. So we can see that big trend. So, and the productivity, and I still pondering. So I have a son. So I see if he don't go to the engineering school, so what he can do? After his graduation. So if he go to even an MBA, don't make that much money in China. Seriously.
Okay, so with other panelists, I'm also optimistic. Even with AI and all those, we'll still have some interesting jobs. Some jobs will go away for sure, but we'll have more interesting things to do. And I'm on top of that, I'm a little more hopeful that AI will help us get rid of these terrible jobs. So the thing is, so as I'm working on these consumer-facing products, I got to know these customer support agents, like their jobs better. Terrible, like those people, like they yell at them. Just the first thing they do, they call this customer support center. Whatever doesn't work, it's not because of this customer support agent, right? But they yell at them and all these things. So I think that these kind of things would be great, can be all automated, like, chatbot and everything. If we have more better this, I guess, NLP, natural language processing, and so on. And another thing is, I think you read a lot about this, Facebook, this like hateful content on the social media that, there are tons of people. Their job is to just watch those like very, very gruesome, like hateful content just to flag, whether that should be, down from the social media or not. I mean, these people, like they're traumatized, and it's terrible, right? So these kind of things, I think that the advancement of AI and machine learning and all those can really help get rid of. So I'm more than optimistic that AI can make our life better.
So we touched actually quite a number of points that I was listing up here. But I wanted to also open the floor a little bit, and I wanted to see if there are some questions from the audience around these topics that you would like to ask our panelists to reflect on. So is there a question that anybody wants to ask? Please come, and we have a microphone here. You can, or I can go and help. So questions, any?
So I really like the last point that you made, which is about improving jobs. I think it's more of a comment. There was, I think last year when in New York City region, toll booths were removed, and I think it was AI which made it happen. But there was a large pushback from people who were in those jobs. And personally, I feel like, oh, those jobs are really bad. I just wanted to hear, what kind of challenges will we face because as the technical side of the community, we see things in one direction, but when we start looking at the broader society and the kind of impact that society will have on the technology, what are not just your thoughts but the panel's thoughts on let's step outside of the technology box, and what kind of issues will we face from society when we are pushing this technology in?
Anyone wants to reflect on that?
So this won't be a new problem. We already have it today. For example, in Singapore, one of the biggest problems is, as most countries do, the aging population. What does that mean? That means that you have a lot of middle-class managers who now need to be retrained to do something else. So this problem already exists today. It will get worse with AI, possibly. But we already have to grapple with it today, and I don't have a good solution myself into how do you retrain people for jobs that no longer exist. It's a huge problem.
I guess how do we, as a technical community, deal with this problem? Is I think where
We, as far as I know, we actually don't.
Yeah, I think, interestingly, maybe I'm from China. I spent the last 3-4 years in China, since I come back, from the Silicon Valley. In China, interestingly enough, they don't need to train. They train themselves. Seriously, a lot of Chinese guys in the middle age, they've been laid off. They go start up their own business and be very successful. So I think it's all about hope. If the society, the country give you enough confidence, yes, we can, then they probably will go out and make the success for themselves. So, I think that technology is a mutual thing. and you cannot solve a problem. It's we can say the technology since Watt invented the steam machines, right? So the human society problem, none of the human society problem being solved by the technology. So we are continue, increasing the productivity of every human being, while we still have the challenges retraining not only our colleague but ourselves. So, and I think that how, especially, and also I'm living, when I, grew up, when I was a very poor families, and I go back, I went to Silicon Valley for 15 years, and then I go back to China. Now I got a chance to go back, revisit my poor villages, and I can see my poor villages today. So now, after 20 years, they become one of the richest villages. So. And they are in the town, less than 500,000 people. They're shipping 100 billion worth RMB of product. Less than 500,000 people. So they have become involved. So ingenuity, entrepreneurship, that make this right. So I think that, and if you go there and take a look, no technology at all. Just traditional old, the textile business. So what I feel, number one, do not think our technology guy, engineering guy as sacred, a savior. We are not. Most of the time, we are not. We are not the saviors. And I think then I think number one, we need to be humble. Number two, we need to speak out and really how we learn from those entrepreneurs. They make changes in the world. Jack Ma do not understand any engineer.
Great points you're making, Sean. I think you're absolutely right that fundamentally there are some challenges, but we just need to be adaptive enough to reflect on a daily basis. I see Robin is coming. Yeah. I will probably.
Do you want the wireless?
Yeah, the wireless one is good.
Yeah.
You have to get people to line up behind the mic because there's no mic.
Let's do this.
Right that way. Oops.
So we are the
Robin Kravitz, University of Illinois. When I think about IoT, I always say if you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers about what IoT means. But when you think about IoT in terms of human productivity, there's certainly a huge area of manufacturing and improving manufacturing. But then there's the area of the user-facing side of IoT. And so this is kind of asking a little bit more about that. We're notoriously bad about understanding how, or predicting how some technology is going to be used. There's history of predicting the wrong things. But one of the things that is very important is that for users to be able to start using something, there has to be a major improvement. It can't just be a minor improvement. And to pick a little bit on Feng's talk from this morning, it's wonderful to make your washing machine better, but you haven't improved the hour and a half it takes for me to sort my laundry, put my laundry in, take it out, hang it up, fold it, all those things. And so the impact on a user is going to be more minimal for something like that. And there's plenty of examples like that. How do we find and how do we pick the things that IoT is going to impact human productivity for users instead of, and again, this is not, for the manufacturing space where inventory and tracking and all of those things obviously are improved by it. But for us as the users, what do you think is going to make the difference?
I think, Robin, this is an excellent question, right? That in the morning, I believe one of the guys actually would ask about how do I define convenience, right? So like in similar vein, one is we need to look at what are the pain points, right? What are the things that people actually wasting time or trying to fiddle with things, right? I mean, these are the ones, if we can actually make it easy, then someone is going to believe this is valuable, right? And the product has that feature, they're going to buy it. Now, you certainly said that there's actually many different pieces of that puzzle. Even if I cannot solve those pieces, like folding or closing and so on, but if I can actually help user to, make it much easier to select what they actually need to set for the washer and the program and so on, that's useful. I'll give you another example. The ability to remote, turning on and off and setting the, say, air purifiers and also the ACs, actually very helpful in Beijing, for example. When the outside air conditioning, the PM 2.5 is actually too high, and the people actually wanted to have that thing started before they get home, because it takes actually quite some time for it to actually do this. So that is a useful feature because, this machine is a connected machine and it has certain features. So these are the ones I think, the marketing people, the people who are doing the user study, they gave us all these feedbacks, and we also do this directly. That's useful. Second is that second class of thing is that the new experiences you can get from these devices. This may not solve your old problem, but without these, you will not be able to enjoy the life as much. For example, if the kitchen, these cooktop and other things, it comes with those features that help you to prepare much more, enjoyable process of preparing food. Now, that's something I would buy, right? I mean, this is something that to give you the new additional values that you don't have. So the iPhone, I think, is very similar. When it first came out, it says, well, you can still make a phone call. That's useful, and pretty easy to make a phone call. You can listen to music. And then all of a sudden, you have an ecosystem of additional value add. That now you can actually do this. Before that you cannot do these things, but now you can enjoy the convenience.
The value add there is huge, right? The information access that you have with this supercomputer in your pocket is immense, and I'm just trying to understand how do we, pick the hard problems or pick the problems that people might be interested in. And again, like I said, we're very bad at it because we always pick the wrong thing. So. I'll step away and let you guys finish talking.
Yeah, Robin, let me comment on a little bit of your questions. Actually, one thing is important. Actually, your question is all the VC community is searching for. Seriously. So in the mobile internet era, there is iPhone, significant event, significant enough to ignite the entire mobile internet era for last 10 years, last 12 years. It's generating trillions of dollars of wealth, right? You can see a lot of app coming, a lot of the infrastructure spending. So generating massive amount of the money and the wealth. IoT today, VC is still searching for the killer app. When is the consumer will adopting smart home, smart car, smart blah blah? We don't know. If you know, let me know. I'm seriously about that. I'm sitting as a CTO, chief scientist, Alibaba IoT BU. I'm searching for that every day. Yes, seriously. And by the way, so what I believe it will be start from business side instead of the consumer side. Smart factory issue. Definitely value added for the factory owner. Smart city and smart the building process. So I will rather believe today the business side, corporation side will adopt IoT much faster earlier than the consumer. Consumer need iPhone experience, which is really tough to deliver, to be honestly.
All right. Very good. I think we need to move on, looking at the time. I wanted to hear, because we have lots of young researchers in the audience, I wanted to make sure that they get something concrete from our elite panelists here. So what I would like to do in this last few minutes is to request our panelists to say one single challenge, each of them, different ones, that we should take back home and work on this for the next few months. And hopefully, collectively, we can come back with an answer to make them happy next year.
I actually have a bucket list of things which I thought, if these problems actually solved, I think would make the consumers much happier, make our products much better. But I'll just pick one. The one that I actually mentioned in the morning, that is, today the device provisioning at in various settings are still too difficult. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to pair them, you need to enter various credentials, you need to do all these handshaking. I like actually these IoT devices to be something like turn on your faucet, the water will come out. Turn on the switch, the lights will be on. These are the kind of experience the user wants. The user doesn't want to remember the password, doesn't want to remember how to actually reconnect. This is the IT people think about. So how do we make them super easy? What are the technologies that allow you to do that? Yet at the same time, this network of devices are safe, both cyberspace and physically, and will not harm people. So how do you actually get the convenience and the safety and the protections at the same time? I think that's something I would love to have on behalf of hires 100 million consumers.
Okay, so Feng already talked about deployment cost, which is a different form. I'll give the other side. If you're talking consumer IoT, you can never have enough battery life. So how do you make things last twice as long, 3 times as long, 10 times as long as what they can do right now? That's really hard.
Yeah, I think device provisioning, battery is very good. So I think how I will ask a pretty practical question. Will Zigbee 3.0, will Bluetooth Mesh, SigMesh, which protocol we should really can unify the smart home? Yeah.
So I second all of those. Like device provision, yes, that's painful still, and battery life, yeah. I mean, it's like not even some battery. I think some sensors they're optimized so that's this like watch battery that lasts like for a year, but still, you don't want to go and replace some sensor, like battery of sensor, like on your ceiling or anything. And then Zigbee versus Bluetooth, yeah, that's a really, I don't know, like $1 million question right now. And to me, I really think that this identity, authentication, authorization problems, they need radical change. I don't know how many online IDs you have. Like, for IoT, like I think Frank also mentioned during his keynote, right? You buy this product, and you download this app, that app, and you have to like create ID for that, each of the app. And then you want to use them all, and then like it's terrible experience, right? And then also authentication, like how many passwords do you have? And it's for IoT device, it's even worse, right? Do you still want to use password to authenticate yourself to IoT device? Probably not. Then what will be? And authorization too, like IoT devices by default are shared. They're in the open space, they're shared amongst many people. How would how would this device know that this person authorized the device to do something? And that's really tough. These are all tough things, and the research community knew that this is tough thing and has been working on this, but now this becomes real, right? All these voice speakers, they're trying to identify a person based on like voice signature and so on, but still it's not good enough for authentication. But I think if you can solve some of these problems, I think you will be really like well thought after by a lot of industry, big companies.
Perfect. Device provisioning, battery life, quantify the benefits of Zigbee against Bluetooth Mesh, and then the last one is identity, authorization, and authentication problems in IoT. All right, great problems. Thank you very much, all our panelists. It was a fascinating learning experience for many of us, including myself. So thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.